Today we're going to be in this conversation that I started several weeks ago about love. Love is. And a lot of times when you hear me talk about love or you hear people talk about love, we try to limit love to just the relationship between a man and a woman. That is inclusive of, it's a part of the story, but we want to just talk about the principles of love in general. And we thought February would be a great month to do that because you would be thinking that it's one thing, but it really is about the other. It's about the big picture, not the little picture. The little picture would be the relationship between a man and a woman, a husband and wife. But we wanted to expand on it and expound on it and show that love we're responsible for love. All of us are responsible for love, whether you're in a relationship that you have a ring on or not, that you are responsible for how we handle and deal with love in general and how love deals with us. And so we've been going down the road here, and as the Holy Spirit has been leading me and giving me insight and ideas to what to elevate, to bring out some of the characteristics that love has. We started in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and we just started talking about the idea that love has many different attributes. There's a lot of things that you can say about love. I think last week was one of my favorites, though, because we talked about love suffers. Did you listen last week? What does love suffer? Love suffers what? Long and is what? Kind. That's an important thing for you to know, that love suffers. And if anybody ever you thought that you wanted to be in love, I think after last week's message, you probably want to rethink that. I'm interested in being in love. Well, if you realize that love suffers, then maybe you want to kind of recant. Be like, I don't know. Let me slow down here a little bit. I also wanted to just kind of go a little bit further. As Heather had elevated this morning, as she was talking about the desire for us to get things started here in the church, and we realized that it was going to require us to serve, right? And so then I started thinking this week that this would be a great way to end and to land this one on love is serving. Love serves. Yeah, love serves. Anybody ever had somebody who could talk a good game about love, but the work didn't show up? I mean, they had all the cool lines from the R&B songs. They had even quoted poetry, Hemingway and others, and talked about love. And then all of a sudden, when you start seeing the actions that corresponded with it, you realize that it was fake and it was phony. How many of you got whole stacks and piles of not Thanksgiving, but Valentine's Day cards? You got piles of Valentine's Day cards with people who are saying that, they help write and articulate what we might feel for someone we're in relationship with, that cards are good, but actions are what? Better. Yeah. Appreciation is good, but compensation is better. And when we start thinking about this idea that love is work, those of you who are in relationship, you know that to be true. That there's no way that you're going to be in this place of a vacuum, that all of a sudden I'm in love and then I can put love on cruise control. Love has no cruise control. You got to stay alert, 10 and 2, and you got to be watching for what is coming up front, up ahead. This is the way that we are supposed to be thinking about it. Anybody who's ever put love on cruise control will know, because you've wrecked, you've had shipwrecked. Somewhere along the way, you didn't make it because you thought that it was going to be without your constant maintenance. It takes work to keep things that are important to you. And this church, specifically, it is work to keep this church going and moving. And so that means that we're going to need those who say that they love Mending Place to do what? Serve. Yeah. Did you know that the word serve, though, really means work in the New Testament? It means work. So love works is a thing that we could say, and I probably will say as we move on down through the message, is that love works. If you work it, love works. But if you don't work, then we won't see those things, those attributes that we say that we love. It'd be like you saying that you love your house, but you don't take care of it. It's like you saying that you love your dog, you don't take care of him. You're like you saying you love your whatever, but you don't do the work that says that you do really care about those things. You love your health, but you don't take care of it. You love your finances, but you don't take care of it. So we sometimes throw that around, but we don't have the corresponding action. There is no work that follows up to say that we really do. So I'm challenging those of you who say that you love Mending Place. Now, I want to see a show of hands here. Make sure that you pan the camera out so we can see everybody who raised their hands. How many of you say that you love Mending Place? Can I see your hands? So we have a volunteer group right now in front of us. We got all these folks that are going to volunteer that will serve, because if you love it, you'll work it. If you love it, you'll work. Your work. I started thinking about a story that I wanted to share with you, a love story. How many of you like good love stories? All right, so good love story, if you're listening, you're paying attention, a good love story should have what in it? Work. A good love story should have in it a level of work and work involved to make sure that the relationship stays healthy. It takes work to get started. How many of you ever worked real hard to get into a relationship? Man, if I could just get with them. I mean, man, if I could just be in a partnership with that company, if I could just some way be connected to that group of people, and you work, you try to get around, get relationships and build relationship in such a way that you could be in the group. And then all of a sudden you realize that it takes work to maintain it and to stay there. It's not just enough to just get it started, but we serve a God who knows how to finish what he starts. Isn't that right? He's a finisher, not just a starter. Now, some of us are guilty of being really good starters. But it takes a special type of person to finish. It takes work to finish what love starts. If you want to be started by love, everybody likes the idea of, oh, I'm so romantically involved, or, oh, look at the opportunities before us. Then it requires something on our behalf to continue the conversation long past the good feelings, long past the newness, because new wears off. Anybody had new wear off? And you start wondering about if the new wears off like this, then what was I looking at in the first place? If the new wears off and now I'm thinking about not staying because it's no longer exciting. We live in a culture and society where when things are no longer exciting, we find ourselves saying that, let me go on to something else. And we oftentimes throw away things that are valuable because they're no longer new to us. They're no longer shiny. And I want to show a picture of love, I think, that's perfect, that intertwines the idea of work. And I'm going to then leave you with 7 principles, 7 attributes or traits that we know that love is working on our behalf. But if you would, in your Bibles, turn to Genesis chapter 29, and I want to read to you a love story. This love story involves a man by the name of Jacob. He is the brother of Esau. He is the son of Isaac. He is on a journey, fleeing his family, his homeland, and he has left not on good terms. Let me just say it like that. He left his house, he's left his brother, his father, and his mother not on good terms. And he is traveling in a very dangerous way. He's traveling alone. Now, anybody who knows this time and this era, this season, this culture, no one travels alone. Traveling alone is dangerous. We see it in the New Testament, the danger of traveling alone, when we find the man who went down from Jericho, and then he found himself falling amongst thieves along the way. That when he finds himself alone, he finds himself victim to those who would be robbers, marauders, those would be pirates like along the way. But now we see the story of Jacob traveling alone. He's by himself, and he's just not going down the street, but he's traveling all the way to the far east. He's traveling to Haran, which is the place where Abraham came from in the very beginnings, the story of the Bible. That God called Abraham out of Haran, and now we find Jacob going all the way back to maybe the core, the beginning, Mesopotamia, Euphrates, that area where we call the birthplace of civilization. He's headed back to that area, and he's doing it by himself. He's looking for something. He's looking for what? Love. He's looking for something. But what he'll find is that when you find love, love requires work. Yeah, it requires work. We find Jacob now coming to this point of a well, and he will be introduced to some of his family members. He will be introduced to his mother's folks, not his father's folks, but his mother's people. How many of you got family like that? That you got your daddy's people and you got your mama's people, and you got some people that you're like, I prefer my mama's people over my daddy's people, or you prefer your daddy's people over your mom's people. You got family like that. He's being introduced to a group of people that he has not had relationship with. He's heard stories about, and his mother has sent him there to go be with his uncle Laban, her brother. Let's pick up the story now, Genesis chapter 29. And I'm going to be reading kind of fast. This is the ESV. I'm going to read the story because you need to know the story, because many of us don't know the story. And I thought about skipping through, cutting out pieces so we can get through. But let me read fast so I can get the big pieces of the story, that you would realize what really took place in whole. And then I'll come back through and we'll outline some things that you should be looking at or thinking about as it relates to love and working. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large. And when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" And they said, "We are from Haran." And he said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" They said, "We know him." And he said to them, "Is it well with him?" They said, "It is well. And see, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep." He said, "Behold, it is still high day. Is it not time for the livestock to be gathered together? Water the sheep and go, pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together, and a stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." Verse 9. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. I'm going to pause right there because sometimes we'll miss this. Rachel was a pretty bad woman. I'm just saying that. She was a female shepherdess. You won't find another one in the Bible. That's kind of cold-blooded, right? She was the first and only that we could see in Scripture. And to think about the idea that she was hanging out with a whole bunch of dudes and she was still a shepherd, that's amazing. So sometimes when you're looking for love, you'll find it in some places that you wouldn't think. All right, so let's keep going. Verse 10. Now, as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban of his mother's brother. That's an amazing kind of way of saying that. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father, and as soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, the sister's son, he ran and met with him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a what? Month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "It's important that you keep these times in mind." So he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for what? Nothing. Tell me, what shall your wage be?" All right, now listen to this. Remember, every time you see the word serve, you should be thinking what? Work. Work. Now Laban had two daughters. The name of the older was Leah, the name of the younger was Rachel, and Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. She had the total package. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to have what to him but a few days, because for what? Love he had for her. He loved her so much that 7 years just seemed like a couple days. Anybody got that type of love? Amen. I hear laughing, I hear joking. I can't even imagine what's in your mind right now. Verse 21. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, that I may go into her, for my time is completed." He's like, it's time for me and her to be alone. So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went in to her. And this simply means that at the evening, there was a tent prepared, a place for them to go and to consummate the relationship. And at this time, Jacob would have already been in the tent. Leah comes in, the older sister, instead of Rachel, the younger sister, in whom he had worked 7 years for. So his uncle Laban is playing a little trick on him. He is doing something that was not very cool, but Jacob is going to have to deal with this. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. And in the morning, behold, it was Leah. So Jacob was drunk. This has been a celebration. He is now awake. He's alert. The sun is up. He can see who he's been sleeping with. And now he realizes it's not Rachel. It's Leah, the older daughter. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years. Uh-oh. You see how this is all starting to kind of play out. He says, do the marriage week, because this is what the custom was. You slept with her already. She's yours. Just go ahead and celebrate the rest of the week with Leah. And then after that, I'll give you another week. I'll give you Rachel, and you can sleep with her. And then you can have both of the daughters. But you got to give me another 7 years of work. And so we get here, and he says, All right, Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. Verse 30. So Jacob went to Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah and served Laban for 7 years. Another 7 years. Can you believe that? You'll come to find out after this, that's the story that I'm going to share. The rest of it is worth you reading on your own. You'll come to find out that it wasn't just a month and 14 years that Jacob stayed hanging out with this wild, crazy cat, Uncle Laban. But he ended up staying there a total of 20 years, 2 decades. Another 6 years, he was focused on trying to keep the cattle in the herd. 7 years for what he thought was going to be Rachel. Another 7 years for the trick that he'd been played on him by his Uncle Laban, and then another 6 years on top of that. So what he thought might have been like a Gilligan's Islands trip, like I'm just going out for a couple of hour tour, and I'm going to get my wife and come back home, it turned out to be 2 decades, 20 years later, and 10 wage changes. Later, he finally gets to a point to where he ends up leaving, but this story is so packed. I mean, there's one chapter, the story in itself is amazing, but I want you to elevate this idea that there are 7 things. There are 7, you hear me? 7 at least that I picked up. 7 signs love is working. You need to know that. So you can be able to kind of gauge your own love, gauge your love. Is love working? Some of you are going to take good notes. Some of you are going to wish that you had closed your ears because you're saying like, man, he's undoing what I had going on. But what we need to realize is that anything that you love, it's going to require you to work. Anything. I don't care what it is. We're speaking specifically about our relationship to the church and our relationship with Christ. We're speaking about the relationship you have with Mending Place, but we could easily be talking about your relationship that you have with anything that you say you love. Some of us may want to recant and say, I don't really love that thing then, if I'm not willing to do some of the things that I'm about to point out to you that we're seeing in the text that we read. I read to you 30 verses, and normally in any other setting, people would say you shouldn't read that much because people can't stand that. But if I tell you it's just a story and I don't tell you that I'm going to read 30 verses, you pay closer attention, right? I hope that that's the case for you anyway. First thing that you should notice that seemed like it was insignificant is the fact that when Jacob shows up, he's being introduced to a new culture. This culture is different from the place he came from, because the place he came from, they really didn't care so much about each other like they care about each other in this place. Do you notice how the flocks are all waiting around the well? They're waiting there because they don't want to get something that others don't get. So the resources are limited and everybody has to share or no one would be successful. If somebody takes the gains, the big piece, or all of the water, or all of the well, or comes and leaves a stone off of the well, then it would be detrimental to not just them, but the entire community. And so they are not there saying like, it's my turn to come, I'm coming whenever I want to come, but they have developed a system within the community to say that at certain times of the day, we all come. We all do it at this time so that we will be then able to be responsible with our resources. If you want to see love working, you'll realize that first and foremost, love that works is interested in the group over the individual. Love that works is interested in the group over the individual. Yeah. I looked at that and I started reading the story and I started, why in the world is all this information in here? And you would think that it's for naught, but when you look at your situation, many times we're coming from one place into another. You're coming from one household and one way of believing, one way of receiving engagement and love and interacting with each other, and you go into another. Jacob is coming from a very tricky setting. He's coming from a place of deception. He's coming from a place where people are all about themselves. I'm the firstborn. I got the birthright. This is my inheritance. This is my portion. And all of a sudden we see him now being introduced to a different way of thinking. And you would think this doesn't matter, but it does. He's realizing that this is not that. And this is not home. This is not normal. This isn't my normal. This is something completely different. I'm learning something about this community. And it simply says that we have to be interested in the group over the individual. Love is only expressed between, well, it can be expressed between an individual and another individual, or an individual and a group. It can't be expressed in isolation. Cannot be expressed by itself. And even when we talked about Eros love on Wednesday night, we talked about that it is exclusive between a man and a woman. And it's exclusive between those individuals who say I do, and it's not shared broadly with entire groups. It's very specific. When we see Jacob coming to this place, he is getting a chance to kind of rethink love. He's rethinking relationship. And if you're going to work and have success in any relationship, you have to realize that it's no longer about you, the individual, but you do well when we do well. Does that make sense? That's why we have on Mending Place shirts, I am because we are. That it can't be just you by yourself. It has to be that we are thinking of the whole. Now, this is going to make more sense as we go a little bit further down the road, but this is just the very first opportunity that he gets a chance to get introduced to love that works. Secondly, I want you to realize something that's happening that maybe many of you may not have paid close attention to, but we see that when love is working, it works regardless of gender. Amen. Amen. Why is this important? Because he wasn't so turned off by the fact that Rachel was a shepherdess. She's working it. She's making it happen. We don't really care about whether a gender was going to prevent you from being able to do certain things. He's being introduced to something completely different. This is such a cultural shift. His eyes and his ability to be able to see the fact that she's adding value, she can do the work, well, we're going to put her into play. That doesn't turn him off. It doesn't mess with him. He's like, well, okay, well, shoot. I see y'all got female shepherders? Okay, wow, this is different. But he's in the game and he realizes that this is a part of this culture and he's learning something even when he sees her show up. The other dudes, they're okay. Matter of fact, there's Rachel right now. Here she comes. Nobody said, oh, shoot, here comes Rachel. She can't hardly keep track of them sheep. I don't even know, like every time she comes around, we got to help her do something. None of that. She was responsible for her father's flock and she was the one who was bringing them. This wasn't her first time. This wasn't her first rodeo. She's showing us that love works even regardless of gender, that if you put people in positions to work, they can work it. If you put people in positions to serve, they can serve it. And so anybody who's thinking that you can't serve at Mending Place based on your gender, there's only certain rooms and certain roles you can participate in because you are a certain gender. Well, let me share something with you. That's not the case here at Mending Place. If you can work, we'll let you work it. I wish I could hear the people online. Amen. Regardless of gender, we see in verse 9 that there is no role too great. There is nothing that's too masculine. There's nothing that's too male-driven oriented that we could see in God's kingdom that would be limited. And for some of you who would want a challenge and throw out whether or not there could be a woman who shepherds or pastors, I take you to pause on this and study it out a little bit further. Just a little bit further. That we are simply saying here that if someone loves and they're willing to work, who are we to limit them from working? Who are we to limit them and say, nah, your work is inferior? No, your work, you're willing to serve isn't up to par. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be available, yes. You have to be able, yes. You have to actually may have some skill set, yes. It wasn't that they were just doing something as a gimme so that they could say like, oh, we got the first female shepherder in the world. That wasn't it. But she's actually proven to be that. Remember what they said when they describe her. They said that she was not like her sister who was weak-eyed. Now, some would say that she was ugly, Leah was ugly, or weak-eyed, I think also is a way of looking at it, that if you're a shepherder, can you imagine a shepherd who could not see? Golly. I mean, you'd have sheep getting chewed up and beat up all over the place. I can't even see the enemy. I mean, like, what is that? Is that a bear or is that, oh, that's just another one of the sheep. The sheep getting chewed up because you can't see. So what we're basically looking at here is that her skill set was right for the job, and she was one who obviously didn't mind a little bit of pushback because she said, I can do the work. Amen? Now, do we have a list of all the things that we have that people can serve in, areas we can serve in? Okay, because I want to make sure that you look at all the things that you can serve in. I don't care who you are in the room. I want you to think about it, and we want to employ people who want to work, who say that I love Mending Place. And this is not just true for Mending Place, yes, but you should be thinking about what this means for every other role that you work in, any other place that you might call home, a place of employment, or even a dream, a vision that God might have given you, and you've disqualified yourself because you felt like you were the wrong gender. Now here's the number 3. 7 signs, this is the number 3. The third sign that love is working is that work always should come before words. I'm from Missouri. Yeah. I'm adopting myself. I'm adopted by Missouri. I'm one of them people who are like always like, nah, I don't believe that. I'm kind of one of those people that every time I get you tell me something, there's a little bit of something back in my mind that says, I don't know about that. Anybody else like that? If somebody tell you something, you're like, probably not. I grew up around people who always lied. They embellish stories. Anybody know somebody like that? If you did 2, they did 4. If you had 5, they had 10. It's one of those types of things. This is what I want you to see. That I don't want to see so much people who talk a good game, but people who can work a good game. So what you'll see Jacob doing is that he doesn't pay attention to Rachel being the woman on the scene. What he does is immediately he starts working. He says, oh, okay, I see you. So he takes the stone off. He says, go ahead and sit down. And then he starts watering the herd. I got you. I'm going to take care of you. Don't you think that would be something that you should do if you really found yourself attracted to a certain person? He didn't have to say nothing. He says, I'm just going to show you that I can work. He started pulling this big old stone off, flexing his muscles and everything. And then all of a sudden, he started saying, no, sit down. I got it. He starts refreshing the sheep. And, I can imagine just kind of side conversation as he refreshing the sheep. Yeah, you know where you from? Yeah, let me get these sheep all taken care of, all this stuff. You can see that he was like, listen, I'm not going to talk too much at the very beginning because a lot of people make the mistake of talking too much at the very beginning. And really, it seals their tomb. It seals their fate. This is what happens a lot at Mending Place. Now, don't you dare use this against anybody or yourself. When I have conversations with people here at Mending Place that say they love Mending Place so much, they lead with a lot of words, but very little action. Oh my goodness. We have been looking for this. Oh, it is so beautiful here. Where have you been all my life? That type of stuff. It just is amazing. The diversity in the room, that you guys could get this done. And I just want to be here. I just can't think of any other place that God would want me to be than here with you. And then the resume. I can do this, I can do that. I know this person, I know them, I know all these things. And I sit there and I smile sometimes because I've been around a little bit of time. And I realize that in this moment, they basically told me that they won't be here long. And my heart hurts because I used to get duped by that. And any woman that has a guy who talks that much about who they are and all that, and you've not seen anything else, no action, you should be hurt. Your heart should hurt. He looks good, but he talks so much that I know he's not going to work hard. My concern for anybody who would be duped, deceived, even by talk, this is what we see Jacob doing. He says, I'm not going to just talk a good game. Baby girl, let me show you. I can move stones. Anybody who can move stones, you need to be dealing with, right? If you can lift loads, listen to what I'm saying. Ultimately, what he was saying with this whole work is that people who are in relationship and who are willing to serve and say they love, they should lift burdens for you. When you serve in this place, you lift burdens for me. You lift burdens for my wife. You lift burdens for the leadership. You lift burdens for others. And when we serve together, it's an amazing sight because we lift burdens for each other. And when we see Jacob lifting this load off the well, he also says that not only does he remove burdens, people who come and they work, but they also then connect you to resources. Because there was no way that they were going to get to the resources unless the burden had been lifted. And when we get connected to resources, it also then gives us a chance to what? Be refreshed. When people serve alongside of you and says that my work will lead the way and not my words, they bring burdens lifted. They also bring an opportunity to connect us to resources, and then they also refresh us along the way. Love does that because love works. It works. It works. It works. It works if you work it. How's your love life? How's your love game? How good are you? Now, and I want you to be thinking about how good people are to you, because you be thinking right now in this service like, man, he's just basically sharing with me that this person isn't really working well for me. I want you to think around the other way, and I want you to think about how you might not be living up to the place that you should be if you say you love. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hold on to it. And here's number 4, because I can stay there for a while. I won't, because I'm going to keep moving. Here's number 4. The 4th sign that love is working is that it will cause you to eventually be able to write your own check. Verse 15, Laban says, man, you've been here 1 month, and I can already tell that you're going to be a blessing to me. You've been here 30 days. So that means that obviously for 30 days, he didn't take his respite. He wasn't just there hanging out, lounging with his feet up and eating grapes. But he was there working. He had added value. In 30 days, he added value to such a degree that Uncle Laban was like, man, let me give you a blank check. What is it going to take for you to stay here? Anybody ever went to apply for a job and someone said, tell me how much it's going to take for us to get you? Anybody? Oh, you add such value. I mean, listen, just in case you didn't know, we like having you around. What is it going to take for you to stay? Yeah, I like that idea. Some of you looking for promotion? You're looking for an increase. You're looking for someone to say that you're worth what you think and know you to be worth. Then let your work speak for you. Let it speak for you in such a way that they say, you know what? We can't afford to lose you. I know that this isn't normal. Now, we normally wouldn't give you a raise now, but I know that you could easily go somewhere else and make more money or have more influence, or your voice could be even more elevated in that particular community. What will it take for us to keep you because we see that you add value? Your work will allow others to say, you know what? I can see it. We can see it. We're experiencing it. What will it take for us to keep it? Yeah. Those of you who feel like you're being used, people who take advantage, I feel taken advantage of sometimes. The people are taking advantage of my work ethic and the things that I do for them. They don't always acknowledge it. I'm encouraging you today, even in my prayer time, to don't allow yourself to quit working hard because you think that someone does not see you or they're not giving you compensation that's adequate for the work that you're doing. I'm telling you that God sees, and it's God who then will provide for you. Continue to do what God called you to do. Keep working hard. Keep working hard. You need to keep working hard. Give it your all, because eventually you never know exactly when or where God's going to bless, and he's going to bring about the change that you already know that's there for you to receive. Tell me what your wage should be. I've never had anybody tell me that. I always go in and I have to negotiate my wage. I worked here before, I could do this. Well, this is where we normally start people out at. Oh man, that's kind of low. $5 an hour, I really can't take $5 an hour. What about $5.50? Can we do something like that? And you say, well, we don't really do $5.50. We do $5.35. And you end up finding yourself at this place where you feel like, okay, well, maybe I'm not that valuable. Maybe I am. But we see Jacob here showing us a very clear sign of what God can do when we stay focused on him. This man is learning something. He's learning something. What is he learning? If you pay close attention to this story, if you know the story before, which you might not, I'm going to give you a little insider information. The scripture defines and describes Jacob when they're describing him and his brother, that his brother Esau was a man of the fields. He was somebody who would go out and hunt. And Jacob was like a homebody, a homemaker. What in the world has changed between him being defined and described as being a guy who hangs out amongst tents versus now he's being asked to write his own check as someone who will be a shepherd? He's changing. God is doing something in his life to where he's no longer just this, but he's also that. And God is showing him that don't let anyone pigeonhole you and make you into one thing. That if God called you in one season to do this, now he can change it and you can do another season. And he's open and available to the fact that his focus has changed. His purpose has now changed. God is changing his resume right before his very eyes. I don't even really mess with sheep. But now all of a sudden you got me out here. And why is he out here? Because of that woman. Some of you wondering why you're in Wichita. I don't even mess with Wichita. I don't even like fields. I don't like this flat land. I'm from some place that's beautiful and sunshiny and the coast and the mountains. All of a sudden, because I fell in love with you, I'm here. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Amen. Amen. It's the same way we see Jacob here. Their story is being changed right before his very eyes. He says, I used to be a tent guy. They used to call me a tent guy. I used to really couldn't do much. And now all of a sudden, God's changing me. I'm willing to allow God to change me. I'm willing to take on responsibility that I normally don't have, but I'm believing God is with me. I'm trusting him. It's not my normal. It's something new. I might ask you, we might ask you in this hour, someone might ask you to do something that you have never done before. But can I encourage you to let God use you in this way? Let God use you. If someone asks you in this church to do something you've never done, and you won't even experiment with, no, I don't know, I don't do that. And I know many of you don't like messing with kids. So I'll use kids as an example. Can you help us with the kids? No, we don't mess with kids, man. I don't feel anointed in that area at all. All I'm saying is that can God just change your story? That you wouldn't be just one-sided, one-dimensional. That he could have a little bit more to it. And all of a sudden, it's the place that he wouldn't think that he was going to be blessed, that God finds himself starting to bless him. New culture, new paradigms, coming from an old place to a new place. What he has never done, he's now willing to do. And God says, that's exactly what I want you to be, is available. You be available to me and you give your all in that place. And I'm going to bless you in ways that you could not even think or imagine. He could have chose money as his pay, but what does he choose? Relationships. He says relationship is more important than money in this way. He says, I'd rather have the woman than any money that you could give me. A matter of fact, you need to see this, that this is point number 5 I want to share with you, is that when love is working, love will always give a second mile effort. It'll give a second mile effort. What you need to see here is that love working is saying this. Did you know that Jacob, in offering his years of work for Rachel, was giving double? Because it really should have been 3.5 years of work to acquire her. He came with nothing. He's got no money. He's got nothing. He's walking there. He's on the run. He really was leaving for fear of his life in his old place. So he didn't take nothing. He took no servants, no cattle, or anything. He's on the run. He gets there, and now he has to work for her. And it should have been that it was 3.5 years, but he ends up saying double because she's just that precious. I could see the value in her. He says, those people, you don't have any idea what you might have in your daughter. I'm going to give you double for her. What others might have only given you 3.5 years, I'm giving you 7 years worth just for this one. And I started thinking about that whole idea of giving the second mile effort and how as a church, we believe in that. We believe in giving second mile effort. We believe in E2, exceeding expectations. And even now, as he shows how much he values her as an individual, not just as transactional, he values her as an individual. He says, I'm willing to give 7 years for her. Laban, the father, says, man, I'm winning with this one. I'm winning with this one because I really should only got 3.5. But wow, he's going to pay double for that? And isn't that funny how we see that same thing elevated in the New Testament when Jesus then goes and tells his disciples to say that if someone asks you to go a mile, go 2? Amen. That it's double then. And that's a part of us showing what? Our love. Because love works. Love works. It works. It works. It just works. I can't say anything else about it. That when we start doing it this way, we realize that if you came in thinking that you were going to have to give the bare minimum, how are you planning on saying that you love something, but you're only going to give the bare minimum? You're going to be average. You're going to get just high enough to where you can cross the bar or the barrier, and you're not going to give your all. You're not going to give the extra thing that's required to say that they must really love this or that. If you go to work today or tomorrow or this week and you're just doing just enough to keep the boss off of you, just enough to meet the requirements, just enough to say that you pass the standards, you're missing the opportunity. If you're serving in the church and you're saying, I'm just going to do just enough so that they can say that I did that to be a member here at Mending Place, you're missing the opportunity. All the things that God is showing us in this text, he's just simply sharing it with us so clearly to say that if you really say you love something, then you'll work for it. But oftentimes we come to church wanting the church to do what? To work for us. Man, work for me. Pastor, preach that message that I like. Abby, sing the song that I like. I like that part when you do, and then Trina goes, and then I like that. We do love it. But if that's you're coming because you just want something, you want it to work for you, that this Jesus stuff would work for me. But you're unwilling to work for it. That's where we fall short. I just see it so many times. Now, I went to church. You've heard this before. I went to church and it just didn't work for me. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yep. I prayed a couple times. I gave a couple times. I went and did this a few times, but it just didn't work for me. Next time you hear that, you got to ask this question. Well, did you work for it? Woo. That's a weak hand clap for real. Weak hand clap. That's second mile effort. 6. How do you know? This is 7 signs, right? 7 signs that love is working. Number 6 is love that works doesn't watch the clock. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You ever imagine yourself being in an intimate setting and you watching the clock? I wish that'd hurry up. Some of you laughing because you done that. You should stop. That was for adults only. But what you should be really thinking about is thinking about, I'm not going to watch the clock. If you say that you love somebody, then you don't watch the clock. How far, how long, when will? Listen, Jacob could easily be watching the clock. But he won't. When he's challenged to go another 7 years, guess what he does? I'm getting it in. He even so bold to say that the first 7 years will be as a few days. How is that possible unless he's watching something else? I'd like you to just think and imagine, what was Jacob watching that made 7 years go by like that? Rachel, yeah, I heard that, yeah. He's waking up every day thinking about, oh boy, I got 5 years, 225 days until she's finally mine. It's what we see in the New Testament where Jesus says, looking unto Jesus, who is the author and the finisher of my faith. Paul said that. It's the same way that we see Jesus saying that it was the joy that was set before me. It's the same way that if you're going to serve well and know that love works, you're going to have to look beyond the frustration, the pain, the time, all those things that are temporal. You're going to have to move beyond those things and start thinking eternal. And this brother could think about, I know he was thinking about, yes, the physical act of being with this woman, but he started realizing, like, man, she's a value add. I can see how hard she works. She's a baller. She gets things done. And then all of a sudden on top of that, man, we can have some phenomenal kids. Can you imagine this? He's thinking all these things about moving his whole generation to another level. He sees her and he says that, man, I'm not going to watch the clock for her. She's worth working for. She's worth having. What in your life is worth working for? To where you says, I don't care how long it takes. This is worth me investing myself in this place. We had an old elder at our old church that Heather and I attended, said he would say something like this. He said, this is a place that I could die in. I said, what you talking about dying in a place? I said, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? When I first heard it, I was like, man, that's kind of morbid. That's too rough for me. I mean, dying in the church? I don't know about giving myself to that degree. He says, no. This is a place that where I know, because he knows the principle of sowing seeds, that seed don't produce unless it dies in a place. He said, this is a place that I could die in. Because it's that good that I can then give myself, and that the fruit that would come from that death would be beneficial to the group, and I would be benefited because I've given myself to. One of the reasons why we don't see a lot of fruit come from Christians' lives is because they're not dying in any place. Because they have a whole bunch of places they call home. That this is this place and that place and this place and that place. I go here, and I'm there and I'm there, and you can't produce fruit that way. And that's exactly why God says there's going to be some place where you're going to die so that you could be planted, so that you could then produce fruit, and that others would benefit because that's where you're at. Does that make sense? Jacob was saying, I'm not watching the clock. I'm not a clock watcher. If you're going to be a lover, if you're going to be a lover that works, then you're going to have to be one that says, you know what, I don't care how long it takes. Whatever you need, that's what I'm going to do. That sounds like a song. All right, verse 7. I mean, not verse 7, number 7. Point 7. Works through distractions. If you think you're going to be able to say, I love something, and do all these things, you're going to have to work through distractions. I've been distracted before. Been distracted in my efforts. Been almost derailed, not just distracted. Can I be honest with you? Derailed is a little more real. Distracted seems sanitary. But I was almost derailed from my purpose because someone got in the way. Because people got in the way. Because somebody said something that was offensive, or someone didn't do what I thought they were going to do, or because this didn't work the way I had planned or hoped it. That it was always those things that came along to derail me from my purpose. What I know God had told me to do versus what I was experiencing in the moment, I almost gave up and quit. Anybody know what it's like to start something and you have this Pollyannish idea of what it was going to be like? This utopian state that I'm going to go in, I'm going to be the miracle worker, I'm going to make it all happen, and wait till they get a load of me. This is going to flow so well, and then you start realizing that you're working with people, and working with people has a way of not being as smooth as we would want it to be, and the distractions that are there to prevent people from doing what love requires is tough. Think about the distractions in your life. The things that prevent you from really being what you would hope to be, dream to be, know you can be, all because you get distracted. And oftentimes, it's not just one of those things that you got distracted because you took your eyes off, but you had your eyes focused on and someone got in the way or something got in the way. Jacob runs into a distraction here, and Uncle Laban is obviously the real issue here, right? Not that he just said, let me trick you with Leah. Not that he just said, give me another 7 years. But it was important that Laban is in the story. This is important because sometimes we say, well, God, give me the same thing, but just take Laban out of it. No. Laban has a special role to play, and Laban represents you and I. I know you don't want to be called Laban. I know that a lot of people would say, well, that's not true. But can I tell you, we're all guilty of playing the role of an Uncle Laban for a Jacob in some place in our life. We would drag our feet. We would make the work harder. We would create moving targets. Or we wouldn't be as clear as we would hope to be. Or we would take advantage of someone's genuine passion or their focus on a particular subject. That we would easily mistreat people. And you might say, no, Pastor, that's not me. I would never do that. Well, what happens in church, and why do people say they have so much church hurt then? Where does that come from? It comes from people who have played the role of a Laban at some point in time in their life. Knowingly or unknowingly, you have been a part of this story. And you can't say that you're only the Rachel or you're only the Jacob, but we play all those parts and all those roles at some point in time in our life. And even then, we see Jacob saying, I will not be distracted. How many of you said, I would do, but I don't like working with them? I would have stayed, but I couldn't stand her. I would have stayed, but I couldn't stand him. And you know what? It looked good from the outside, but once I got a little closer, it was too nasty, it was too messy, and no. I'm trying to challenge every one of us to realize that we have a part of this story to play. And more importantly, we are the fix. Not just the problem, but you are the fix. That our service and the way in which we choose to engage with each other, it matters. And it's the thing that's going to make us and allow us to be able to serve people at a higher level and a better. Do you know that it was the next generation that was really being birthed here? If you remember closely, the stories that I've been telling this series, this really is the beginning of the story before the children of Israel go into captivity. This is the very beginning, because Jacob has 12 sons. And then these 12 sons are the same ones. Remember when we were talking about how Joseph last week, he wept and he cried because his brothers threw him into the pit, and how they realized, or they didn't realize, that it was God who did it. God did it to set this all up. Where do you think that starts at? This whole story of Joseph starts here. This is Joseph's father, Jacob. We're talking about now here, getting with his mother. Before there was a Joseph, there was a Jacob and a Rachel. And this starts right here. And why does that matter to you? Because imagine if he would have been distracted and he wouldn't have done the things he needed to do, then we can ask ourselves, what would have happened to the story of Joseph, them going into Egypt, them preserving the nation, and then them coming out strong? What would have happened had he been distracted by Laban's greed and Laban's selfishness? What would have happened? What happens in your life when you're distracted by someone else's selfishness or greed? What happens in other people's lives when you are the one that's doing the distracting? I didn't have this in your notes, but this is Mark chapter 10, verse 45. Just listen to it. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Came to serve. Jesus came to what? Work. Jesus came to work. So when everybody wanted to serve him, he says, no, I came to work. He says, who will be the greatest in the kingdom? The people who come to work? Serve? No, work. He said, the people who come to work will be the greatest in the kingdom. He says, you're going to have to do the same things you see me doing. This is why he disrobes himself. He takes a basin of water and begins to wash his disciples' feet, because he wants to show you the value of work. There's work involved in this relationship. Yes, there's a finished work that Christ has done, but then there's work for us to do along the way. There's no way you're going to be able to really fully express the love that we're supposed to express. How will they know that you're my disciples? By the love you have for one another. Well, how do we then express love? Because we're choosing to work. We choose to serve. We choose to be counted. We're not the people who come to what? Have it work for us. But we're willing to work for it. That's when you know you really love something. I'm willing to work for it. And I'm praying that you realize that this is, yes, specifically about Mending Place, but then it's about the church in general. It's about the church global. That you would be willing to realize that the best way that the church is going to be seen in this hour, in this day and age, is because we're willing to work. Love works. It works. That's what you need to know. Can I pray for you? Father, I thank you so much for this time, this opportunity we have to elevate your word above all things. We elevate it today in such a way because we realize that there's work involved. What's our role? What's our responsibility? What are we to do? With what we know and what we've been given, what are we to go with this? It requires us to make a choice to work. Let us not be like some who are just hearers of the word, but not doers. Because if they just hear it and then don't do, they deceive themselves, the scripture says. Well, it's another way of saying do, work. Let them not just hear, but then let them work along the way as well. This morning, I know that there's people in this building and maybe watching online, Lord, that don't know you. They don't know you in the pardon of their sins. They don't know you as their Savior. But you did the work. Now our job, our responsibility is to receive. That's the work we have to do. If you're in the building, you say, Pastor, that's me. I've never accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I've been observing, watching, wondering, had questions, but I know that you have called me to this place. If you're in the room, you say, Pastor, that's me. I want to make a decision to make Christ number one in my life. Can I see your hand? I want to pray for you. I want to pray for you and share with you how steps have to be taken, which is our responsibility. One step that leads to another step that leads to another. And how you're taking the same journey that others have taken before you. Are you in the room? Can I see your hand? Pastor, that's me. I've never made a commitment to make Jesus Christ number one in my life. I've wondered, been curious, maybe even nervous. But I feel an unctioning, a pulling, a calling, if you will. I can't describe it, but I know I need to make a decision for Him today. That's you. I want to pray for you. Yeah. No one's in need of salvation. Maybe you're in the room, you say, Pastor, I'm saved, but can I tell you, I didn't realize that I was always wanting and needing the church to work for me, but I wasn't willing to work for it. Pray for me in that way. Pray for me in that way. I need some help in that area. Pastor, pray for me because I realize that my love isn't working in general. There's a lot of things in relationships in my life that just don't make sense. But based on what you've shown me in these signs, I'm missing some things. I need to get back to some things. My relationships might be hurting because I've kind of let down on some things and I put myself on cruise control even though there really isn't one. There is no autopilot. Not for love. If you're in the room and say, Pastor, that's me. Will you pray for me? Pray for me in those ways. Pray for me to help me see that I got to get back on the horse. I got to get things right. Pray for me that I wouldn't blame other people for things that I'm supposed to be doing. Pray for me. Can I see your hand? Yes. Father, I thank you. I thank you for everyone that's here in this building under the sound of my voice, that they would have taken the word that has been sown today, that it would be in their hearts, and that they would hide it, God. They would fold it over. They would bury it, plant it, so that it would then produce fruit to your glory. Thank you that what you've said today and the way you've spoken to your people, that it will be lasting, that it will be transformative, and that just like you came that many would come, you worked so that many would be able to come. May we do the same in this hour that's coming. May we find ourselves busy doing the business of the Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Come on, put your hands together for Jesus. You have been equipped. You have been equipped from God to be a mighty warrior, to serve like no other.